Hello everyone, this is Tony. I am doing the audio commentary for the complete 6th season of the New York Files. This season ran from February of 2018 to, I believe, April 2018. It was kind of one of those short seasons, something we're always known for doing, especially around this time. I'd say the seasons 4 to 7 era of the New York Files, we were always known for at least a short season. So the first episode in this season was Day of Surprises True Epilogue. Production-wise, it was known as Day of Surprises Part 2. The origin of this episode was essentially when we wrapped up the 5th season. One of the goals we had tried to achieve was to get a Rocco Funko Pop. And of course, that didn't end up happening. In fact, we actually put in an order for a Rocco Funko Pop with GameStop. And of course, this whole episode is telling the tale of the aftermath of that. Of essentially everything that broke down from like the ending of the 5th season to at least what would eventually become the start of the 6th season. And yeah, the first thing that ended up happening was we got sent the wrong Funko Pop, which, in some respects, I can understand where you made the mistake, but in others, like, how you couldn't tell until you handed me the receipt and said, yep, it's all set to go, here you go, and it's like, great, wonderful. Mail comes in like a week or two later, and you look at it and go, something about this seems off. I can't put my finger on it. But yeah, so this is essentially, this episode was covering the aftermath of all this. This is also probably one of the rare appearances of my folks' kitchen. I usually don't film outside of my room, or at least when I lived with my folks at the time. But I kind of made the rare exception just because of this packaging, because I kind of needed a wider space for it. So this is the rare exception of seeing my folks' place outside of my room. But yeah, so there's the heifer, and yeah, I clearly wanted Rocco and Spunky. And of course, later on in the season, we will get Rocco and Spunky, and I'll tell you the whole story behind that, because that in itself was a hoot and holler. But yeah, so pretty much, again, this episode kind of covers the aftermath of all that. And I think the most interesting thing about this episode is when we were factoring in all the logo videos and all that at the time, compiling all that together in terms of the video count, this became the 950th video. Now looking at it, I think it's got somewhere in the 200s. I'm not 100% sure, but it's got to be somewhere in that range. So the Pokémon Tournament controller I get in this segment, the funniest thing about that is, since I've gotten it, I have not opened it. Actually, the reason I did get it was because it was the only thing that was in that price range that I felt like I could be well suited with, and of course I didn't. Yeah, it's still in the box, still has the price sticker on it too. It's funny that something that I've held on to for almost 3 years now, I have not opened, not even touched. And there's been a part of me that's wanted to just return it, but I'm like, no, it's the only Switch controller I got for that game, which, of course, I didn't end up getting that game until right around the time Toys R Us closed down, which I think was like the following year. So this is the Mario cereal segment, and when I produced this video, this was around the time the cereal was being scalped and all that. So it was a lucky break to actually get your hands on it, and I was able to get my hands on 2 boxes. I guess actually that should bring me to the other part of this season story, which is this season was produced at a weird point in time. this was kind of at a point when I was in the middle, I want to say in the middle of switching jobs. So, to clarify, the first 3 episodes of this season, I was still working at Walmart. But when we get into the second half of the season, episodes 4 to 6, I was working for an insurance company called Davis Vision. So it's a complete mood shift, I would say, if you compare the first 3 episodes of the season to the last 3 episodes of the season. But it essentially led to more night shots, which was fine, but it kind of got annoying after a while. And so we had to make a lot of changes, and we started making those changes in seasons 7 and 8 of how we were going to film this and how it was all going to be edited and compiled and yada yada yada. So that's the end of that episode. And I don't think I got any more stories for that episode, actually. I think the only other thing I can say is the other box of Mario cereal ended up getting sent to my brother. And he ate it, enjoyed it. I don't know if he kept the box. I want to assume he did. For the amiibo pad on the backside. So now we're moving into Colony vs. Crossgates Battle Royale Deluxe. This is the last episode in which I actually worked at Walmart. This episode, I don't really think I have that many stories on it. There's a couple, but not a lot. I guess the first one I could talk about is one, it snowed. This was during a huge storm that was coming through the Northeast at that time. I think this was before the Nor'eastern, maybe another month or so before the Nor'eastern. What I do remember is my car almost slid off the off-ramp coming into Colony. And I remember that because when I got to the stop, I literally had to take a breath. And this is before the big event, which I will not name, at least not until the end of the 7th season, when we get to that audio commentary. But it still left some form of paranoia with me, almost sliding off that ramp. I remember telling coworkers, like, yeah, I almost slid off the ramp coming into Colony, and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay, but just, it's one of those things that'll spike your heart rate for a while and kind of make you a little more cautious for at least the next 3 to 4 days. But yeah, so snow. I don't think I have any other stories about Colony, at least. This episode essentially just came out of good timing. Like, I got lucky at that point where I was like, oh yeah, I got some leftover money after bills and all that, and yeah, let's splurge a little. And I think the term "let's splurge a little" has a different connotation nowadays than it did, at least when I worked on this episode. I think nowadays when I say "let's splurge a little," it's alright, let's start getting work done on the next episode of Imported Monthly. Then it was like, alright, let's shoot an episode of the New York Files. And I guess that actually brings me to another thing that I never thought about talking about, but there's a factor into why certain seasons had more episodes than others. Like, for example, this season had 6. Technically 5 aired, 6 produced. The reason it did was just, like, we had one episode that we technically held over for about 2 months. And then the remaining episodes were just the ones that we were able to produce. Snap, like, out. And I guess the factor it usually comes down to is once we pay off all the bills and have everything taken care of, what's left over? and the question of what's left over always permeates with each passing like 2 weeks when we are ready to produce an episode. I know for at least this season, the only reason we honestly did 6 is I don't know, I felt like 6 was such a nice even number. It happens a lot where we end up doing just a certain even number of episodes. So coming up is my worst Carlos Alazraqui impression. And I cringe at that. So I guess I could explain that one. So the thing is, when I finally found the Rocco Funko Pop, it was at FYE. It was on a shelf that they had in the back called like the top 10 most popular. I got it. And I went up to the counter and I told the clerk, I'm like, you have no idea how hard this was to find. And she's like, oh really? I'm like, yeah, I spent 2 months looking for this thing. She was like, oh, well, you should have came here first. I'm like, you know, I didn't think about that until now. That now I would definitely do that first. But back then, my first thought was, okay, Barnes & Noble, no. Alright, GameStop, no. Alright, I guess we can go for FYE. If not, we go on eBay or Amazon. And in regards to like Funko Pop now, like I think Rocco's maybe one of the last major ones I got. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. I think the last ones I ended up getting overall were Android 18 and Cal Maria. And there's a couple that have recently come out that I wanted to get, but I've been kind of iffy about, if that makes sense. I think in terms of this show, I think we have one more episode that features Funko Pops, but I think that's the next season. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all the stories I have for this. My apologies for all these brief pauses. It's hard for me to talk about these videos because I've done these almost 2 years back. So it's kind of a trip to see all this old stuff again. Especially to see the car. It's interesting. Because the more things change, the more things stay the same. Like my glasses are still the same. My haircut's still the same. Just a lot of things are still the same. Some things are different though. Kirby Battle Royale. The game I actually almost forgot about until the last minute when I was editing the video going, yeah, we gotta add this in there. I completely forgot about it. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of a trip to see all this again. So now we're into the episode Northeastern Exposure 18. This episode has an interesting story behind it. Well, first off, the idea of doing an episode and having it named after a major storm that was coming through, that was never the original intention. The original idea we had was we were going to produce an episode called A GameStop at Del Mar. And what ended up happening was between the time we had planned to do the episode, or at least made the announcement we were going to do it, and the time we actually got around to filming, yes, we had a big major storm that blew through the northeast called the Northeastern, and it was a massive storm, massive. But like, I guess it caused a few incidents for some people, but not I don't know. I'm trying to find the words I would use to describe it. I guess in some ways it was just a major blizzard that came through. But it kind of put a halt on us doing the Del Mar episode. And so when I was trying to think of, okay, what could be the replacement, gotta have something. I think at that point Dragon Quest Builder had just come out, and I was like, alright, I haven't played a Dragon Quest game in a while. I think the last one I bought was for the 3DS when I was on a big 3DS buying binge after I bought my 2DS. So I'm like, yeah, let's do a Dragon Quest episode, I guess. And so I did. I started doing some work on that. And then around that time, I had gone into Target. I don't know why. I usually like to stop in other shops once in a while and just look around. And I came across this girls fighting game, and I thought that was so interesting. It's I was like, oh, it's Japanese girls fighting game, kind of something like that would come out of SNK or Sega during the mid to late 90s. I gotta get my hands on this. And I looked at the price, and I'm like, it looks to be about $30. I'm gonna put my finger on that and just wait. And I gave it about a week or two. Came back, and when I bought it for this episode, ended up being about 20. So I got lucky. And again, as previously mentioned, this was the first episode that was shot when I started working at Davis. And so I don't really like to dive into much of my time with Davis. I think the most I could say was it was short-lived. I lasted about 3 months there. And I got fired mainly due to my stress. Yeah, working at a call center was really stressful, especially for someone like me who's somewhat neurotic over things, or I guess in other terms, I'm usually quick-heated with temper. And certain things can immediately just get under my skin. With Davis, it wasn't stuff that got under my skin, it was stuff that just kind of boiled in my head. It didn't make me upset, it just made me run down and exhausted, sad, if that's the word I want to use to describe it. But, I mean, I don't honestly, again, like to talk about it. I put it in the past. I just realized there was another interesting thing with this episode. I think it's the first time in, 3 seasons I had used the dash cam. I want to say 2 to 3 seasons the first time I've used the dash cam. And I think the only reason I pulled it out was I was like, I might as well get footage of the storm. Just because. If I'm still having to work, I might as well get footage of the snow. And lucky I did. Because it was insane. I'm trying to think if I got anything else. Don't really think I do. I guess if I want to, I could really keep talking about. No, I can't actually. I'm trying to think of stuff to say. Again, it's kind of hard when you've seen these episodes for a long time. Actually, this shot right here. This shot was a mistake. I'd shot that, I want to say, maybe end of March, start of April. It kind of came at a weird period. But, yeah. Yeah, so that one shot, that came from, I think, something I shot in the end of March. I want to say the end of March. And it was just... No, it wouldn't have been the end of March. That'd have been the end of February. It's kind of hard to remember half of the stuff, especially stuff you did 2 years ago. And especially stuff that came from kind of a dark period, at least in your mind, of your life and your show. I'm trying to remember what else there was. I don't think I got anything else. I mean, I guess the other thing I could talk about is, yeah, that was an inconsistency. A couple of inconsistencies with this episode, but I don't know, I usually brush them off. Yeah, I really got nothing else to talk about with this episode. I guess I can talk a bit about kind of the developments that led to the ending of the season, because doing the Leftover Special Volume 2 was never my sole intention. When I had started the Davis era of the show, the second half of the season, I kind of had higher intentions. I know at one point, and I constantly keep saying this, at one point, I know I've wanted to do a New York City video. I've wanted to do one for so long, been trying to find the opportunity, haven't found the opportunity. I've actually gotten really close. I'll talk about that though when we get into Season 8. When we get to Season 8 I'll talk all about that. But for now, I guess the most I can say is we kind of sketched out an idea for the New York City video here, at least at the end of the season, but we never got anywhere with it. We made the attempt again during the 7th, never got anywhere with it. Again, I'll probably go into full detail on this in the Season 8 commentary, but kind of, I guess, the etchings of the New York City idea started coming around this time. God, it is hard to come up with stuff to talk about for this. I guess I could just talk about... No, actually, I just thought of something I can talk about. I could talk about the artwork, because this was the first episode I had done where I had done a custom avatar, and drawing that took about 2 days, I want to say. Correction, that was game number 268. Now I look at that number and I kind of laugh a little. Because that number is now not really doubled, but at least has gone up a couple 200. Anyway, yeah, so the avatar. Yeah, the avatar took 2 days to draw, and the inking took, I gotta say, at least another 2 to 3 days to do. I could be exaggerating on that, but if my memory recalls, I would at least say it took 2 days to draw. I'm gonna kind of drop a truth bomb here. I'm not personally used to drawing in an anime style. It's one of those rarities where I have to have like a reference drawing for it. And so doing that thumbnail, I had to base the reference drawing off of the cover art for Dragon Quest Builders, but I also had to look some more into Akira Toriyama's style, so I can make sure I had everything just niched in correctly. Like I said, it took about 2 days to draw, and I think a day or 2 or 3, again, I can't really remember, to just digitally color. But so this is Late Night Rensselaer Freedom. This episode has an interesting story behind it. This episode there was originally a version of this episode that was shot at midnight. Now, why we did a video shot at midnight? Well, 2 reasons. One, at that time, I had still worked for Walmart when I had shot the first version, which we'll probably actually see in the next episode, the Leftover Special Volume 2. But reason 2, certain things didn't fall into place like I had wanted it to, so I didn't end up finishing that version. So the version we're watching now, we shot this at about maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock in Rensselaer and East Greenbush, and we just put like a dark filter over it just to make it look like it's more dark. Like if you look into the corner, you can tell there's daylight still. But the reason I did that is because I still need to get a video out, and I kind of thought, well, I can still give it a shot and at least make it look like it's midnight. Of course, that didn't end up happening. But yeah, so that all happened, and so we didn't end up shooting that version. When I got to Davis, we shot the alternate version, which is the one we're watching now. I should talk about the title. Actually, I should talk about the titles for most of these videos. The title is usually something I first come up with. There are some episodes that I just immediately have the title right in my head, where I'm like, I know what the title is going to be. Late Night Rensselaer Freedom. That title came from, I think it was a parody of an Elton John song, if I remember correctly. It was like a song that would, when I used to work at Walmart, and I used to work up to the midnight shift, the weird thing is, when I was coming home, there'd be one song that would play every night at around 12:30ish, right around the time I was getting home. And I want to say it was Philadelphia Freedom. That was it. It's Philadelphia Freedom by Elton John. And I kept hearing that song over and over and over again, like weeks on end, as I worked at Walmart. So yeah, so that's where that title came from. Okay, we're getting near the end of this episode. I guess I could talk about the footage that we're about to see over the end credits. That footage I had shot at a McDonald's. No one knew. It was probably the best 30 seconds I'd ever shot. And the idea for it, just Szechuan sauce, it just started making a popularity round again, and I had just decided, alright, I'm gonna try it out. And of course, I tried it, I enjoyed it. I think I maybe had it 2 other times after that. That's pretty much it. But the reason it came back was because of the whole freaking Rick and Morty fiasco that centered around it. McDonald's decided to have a one-day event to celebrate Rick and Morty. Of course, that blew up in their face, and people got pissed off. So, the end of that story is McDonald's, don't try. So now we're up to the last episode of the season. This is the Leftover Special Volume 2, and the idea for this episode was, again, of course, we got a bunch of extra clips that we shot over the year. Let's do another Leftover Special. The fascinating thing with the Leftover Special is I personally wanted the Leftover Special to be like one of those yearly events. Like, it was something I would do every year. It was something that, like, we could just shoot a bunch of extra stuff and just throw it out at the end of the season. Of course, that never ended up happening. But, I mean, I was happy enough to get 2 of those out during this run. So, and of course, with the first one that we did, it was a whole homage to Alfred Hitchcock. So I thought for the second one, well, let's just do a VHS tape, found footage. And of course, it worked out beautifully well. This episode actually holds some distinction, at least for me, was as the biggest pain in the neck episode I had ever produced. Why? Because it was the biggest effects heavy episode of the season. This episode is one giant clip with an effect shot overlaying it. the VHS tape effect, like, I had to find one that was at least long enough to cover the entire episode. And I think the one I found was like 2 minutes, but we would clip off a part from the beginning, and we would just repeat the same clip over and over and over again. In fact, I think if you keep watching this, you would you will see a moment where, like, it cuts straight to green. And the reason it did that was because I forgot to put a background remover element on that one clip, and so many people got to, like, miss out on some dialogue for, I think, 3 to 5 seconds. The other thing with this episode is, this episode includes the original version of Late Night Rensselaer Freedom, which is this clip we're watching right now, and actually the next clip we're going to see. Now, the reason why those clips were thrown into the special instead of, again, being their own episode was mainly continuity reasons. I'm usually someone who likes to be a stickler for continuity. I know, ironic, right? But there are moments when, like, when at least it comes to, like, clothes or comes to appearances, I have to stick to continuity on it. It's actually one of the reasons why I decided when I was going to do Imported Monthly to have an ensemble costume for my character on that show, because it made more sense to have just a costume than to just constantly be rotating wardrobe every episode. I think the only time I broke that rule, though, was for one episode, but we won't talk about that until the Season 9 commentary, which will come out sometime in the future. So that's kind of a main rule I've usually had. At least the one thing I always pay attention to is at least character continuity. Like, footage continuity, that can vary. If you caught the clip, you caught the clip. But, like, character continuity, I gotta stick to it, regardless. The other distinction this episode has is it was also the reveal of the 275th game. And in all honesty, that just kind of came out of left field. I had no real intention of getting Detective Pikachu. It just kind of happened. Just like a lot of things, it just kind of happens. But yeah, I think that's the only other distinction for this episode. This episode, I also believe, is the last one that was done when I worked for Davis. So it kind of became jarring, especially when it uses certain clips that I recorded when I worked for Walmart. And what's also funnier is there's actually some new clips in this episode that I had shot while I worked at Davis. So the clips are always kind of jumbled. But again, that's why they call it a leftover special. The Rocky and Bullwinkle tapes. I still have those tapes too. Actually, I'm trying to remember where it was. I want to say back in Michigan? Back in Michigan, I think I ended up getting, like, majority of the Rocky and Bullwinkle tapes. I think at this point I'm only missing 2, 3. But yeah, I was trying to get those tapes for the longest time. Here we go. Here's another newly recorded shot. I could tell it's newly recorded because I have my leather jacket on, and there's another one. I never even noticed that one. Watching this now almost 2 years later, and I've never noticed that one. Anyway, what was I saying? The newly recorded clips. So these were shot in the spring, And I can tell that because Leather Jacket 1 and Guardians of the Galaxy t-shirt underneath, too. But, yeah, so... yeah, we shot these, end of March? Start of April? I know the episode aired April 12th. So, here we go. Second to last clip. And so the ironic part of this clip is we shot this on the same day as the last clip. We did not separate shooting days. So those last two clips, the one with the Dragon Ball book and this one, these were shot on the same day. And not only were they shot on the same day, the only way I broke the continuity was by just adding on my glasses, putting on my hat. Seemed to solve the issue. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything else I could talk about. Oh, those Disney books, those were incredible to find. I think the one I was the most proud of finding was the Eric Goldberg book, his Art of Disney book. I thought that was interesting. Oh, there's another one. Wow, I did not notice how many of these were in here. But I guess, I mean, that it adds to the quality, I guess. But, God, I'm trying to find more stuff to say. I simply cannot find anything else to say. I guess if I had any lasting things to say, it's what did the season mean overall? So, yeah, season 6 was kind of a pain in the butt, but I got through it fine. I know there's a part of me that says, well, if I hadn't... God, there's another one. How many of these were there? Those stupid little glitches. Anyway, shoot, I lost my train. Oh, I guess I was gonna say, I always think, like, if I hadn't gotten fired from Davis, what would have I done with the show? And I think the obvious answer is I would have done the New York City special. I would have probably done the other episodes I'd originally planned. I know I had an episode planned I wanted to do that was going to be centered around Woodstock, New York. And I think at this point in time I was also... God, there's another one. I'm sorry, I never noticed most of these glitches. I know the other one I had planned out was Schenectady. Because this was before I'd even went up north to Schenectady, if that makes any sense. This is before I went up there. And there's that Blu-ray set. And the only reason I bought it was because of the altered scenes. Anyway, but like... yeah, it's like, that's probably what I would have done with the show if I kept on the line at Davis. But then again, also the incident, which I will talk about, the Season 7 commentary track, hadn't happened as well, we probably still would have... Jesus, there's another one. We probably still would have done those episodes, regardless. Yeah, so... I'm sorry, folks, it is hard to find something to talk about when kind of looking back at these old episodes. And I guess I'm trying to think of what else I want to say. I guess I could say it's this episode. I think the last thing I could really talk about is this is the first episode that did a post-credits scene, and I only did it because while I was editing, I'm like, oh, I got the Detective Pikachu game, 275. Let's throw it in. Yep, there we go. And yeah, at this point, I was young and naive, and I had the world ahead of me. I honestly just had no idea how far the collection was going to go, and at the time of this recording, we're actually nearing the 500th game, which actually scares me even more to know that 16 years worth of collecting and finally gotten me to 500. Yeah, it's actually kind of a shocker. But yeah, so this was definitely one of the last shots I think I'd done for Davis, or I'd done while I worked at Davis. But yeah, I guess with all that said, this is Tony. I am signing out. I will see you all next time. Take care, everyone.
I know there's an amiibo that came out with it, but it's $30 and I really do not feel like paying that money. I paid the $38 to get this, but I'm not paying the $30 for that. That'll be a story for another time. Just not right now. So, yep, that's it. That's game number 270 right there. This is Tony. I'm signing out. I'm gonna go home and just marvel at everything I've done so far. Because things can only get better from here, right? I hope. Take care, everyone.